Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at Exodus chapter 23. So God is continuing to give the law to Moses on Mount Sinai. So far, we've seen the 10 Commandments be given, and we've seen the dedication the Israelites should have towards God and their neighbors. But what's it all for, right? What is God going to do for them if they keep all of these terms and conditions? As God wraps up with the people's responsibility to be impartial, He promises to provide for them and live with them in that land that was promised to their ancestors. You shall not bear a false report. Do not join your hand with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. You shall not follow the masses in doing evil, nor shall you testify in a dispute so as to turn aside after a multitude in order to pervert justice. Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his dispute. The first few laws in this chapter are given to protect the integrity of the courts, but it's also phrased in such a way that it also applies to public opinion and our everyday interactions with people. And notice the nuance there too. We're not supposed to follow the masses in doing evil, but we're also not supposed to break away from the multitude in order to pervert justice. Our job is to dedicate ourselves to the truth, regardless of what the masses think. Dedication to truth and justice releases us from making false reports and from showing partiality, no matter who it benefits. If you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey wandering away, you shall surely return it to him. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying helpless under its load, you shall refrain from leaving it to him. You shall surely release it with him. And we've seen laws in the previous chapters about returning lost property or animals to the rightful owners. But here it's made explicit that we should be taking care of our enemy's property too. Jesus is going to adapt laws like this into the famous love your enemies passage that's found in the Sermon on the Mount. And it furthers that theme of not showing partiality. You shall not pervert the justice due to your needy brother in his dispute. Keep far from a false charge, and do not kill the innocent or the righteous, for I will not acquit the guilty. You shall not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and subverts the cause of the just. You shall not oppress a stranger, since you yourselves know the feelings of a stranger, for you are also strangers in the land of Egypt. We get variations on that theme of not showing partiality. Again, we get repetitions of the bans on false witnesses and the perversions of justice. We also get a ban on bribes. We're also called to not oppress immigrants and sojourners, people who very easily would have been victims to partiality in a court setting. Presumably, they would have been poor, right? And they would have been coming to a place where they didn't have any family ties, any connections, no connections to power. Not showing favoritism is critical here and all the way through the rest of the Bible, especially in places like James chapter 2. You shall sow your land for 6 years and gather in its yield, but on the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, so that the needy of your people may eat, and whatever they leave the beast of the field may eat. You are to do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. God switches here and gives further instructions on Sabbath cycles. Even the land needs to rest every 7 years. But notice that this isn't just an ancient equivalence to crop rotation. It's for the advantage of the poor who can't afford food. Whatever is left behind every 6th off-season is to be given away as charity. And this helps us remember that the Sabbath is not just for our benefit, for us to rest and relax. It's for the benefit of others too, so that God can provide for them. 6 days you are to do your work, but on the 7th day you shall cease from labor, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and the son of your female slave, as well as your stranger, may refresh themselves. Now concerning everything which I have said to you, be on your guard, and do not mention the name of other gods, nor let them be heard from your mouth. And here God gives further definition on the Sabbath that's supposed to happen every week. Every 7th day, every person and every animal is going to rest from their work. Just like how God rested on the 7th day of creation in Genesis 1 and 2, and how the people rested from gathering manna in Exodus 16. And again, this Sabbath rest day is not just for the elite landowners, it's for the slaves and the workers and even the animals. The point is for everyone to physically renew their bodies and remember that God is the ultimate provider and sustainer of all life. That's why God goes on to say, don't credit or praise false gods for that life that you have. That's because He's the only one who actually provides, and so he's the only one who's actually worthy of our worship. Verses 14 through 19 go on to set up signifiers to make sure the Israelites are worshiping the real Yahweh God and not a false one. They relate to 3 annual feasts that are put in place to remember what God has done for them. These are the Feast of Unleavened Bread, to remember Passover, the Feast of the Harvest, which goes on to become Pentecost, and that's to celebrate the spring harvest, what they call the first fruits, because they're the crop that comes first in the year. And then finally, there's the Feast of the Ingathering, which later becomes known as the Feast of Booths, to celebrate the fall harvest. Notice how all 3 of these worship celebrations give credit to God for provision and protection over their lives. And then the final few laws of this passage set up distinctions for sacrifices to the Lord God that would differentiate the Israelites from their pagan neighbors. Those pagan false gods supposedly provide because they get worshipped. But our God, the Yahweh God, is different. He provides, and we worship him in response. Behold, I'm going to send an angel before you to guard you along the way and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Be on your guard before him and obey his voice. Do not be rebellious toward him, for he will not pardon your transgression, since my name is in him. But if you truly obey his voice and do all that I say, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. So now we get a shift in this covenant agreement. If the Israelites do all the things that God commanded them to do in the last 4 chapters, God says, this is what I will do for you. He will deliver them all the way to the promised land, the land promised to be given to Abraham's descendants. And this language is echoed by Jesus in John 14, when he talks about preparing a place for us as followers of Christ, a new heaven and a new earth, a new creation. For my angel will go before you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I will completely destroy them. You shall not worship their gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their deeds, but you shall utterly overthrow them and break their sacred pillars in pieces. God pronounces judgment over the pagan cultures that are currently occupying the promised land. And let's name that these passages can sometimes be off-putting. But we have to remember, from places like Genesis 18, that God's judgments are completely right and correct. He's not going to sweep away the righteous with the wicked. We'll see an example of that in the story about Rahab. But also here, there are explicit ties to the false gods that these pagan nations are serving. And it reminds us of the false gods that were being served in Egypt and all of the tyranny and corruption that was happening there. It's easy to surmise that these cultures are doing the same amount of slavery and brutal conquest that any of the other ancient empires are doing. Slavery and brutal conquest that later in the biblical story the Israelites will be practicing, and they will get judged for doing that. In contrast to all of this, worshiping God, following him, and being a part of his kingdom is about justice being done and the uplifting of all mankind. But you shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will remove sickness from your midst. There shall be no one miscarrying or barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. God continues in his promises to bless the Israelites if they keep this covenant. And that bread and water reminds us of Exodus 16 and 17, where God has already provided bread and water in the wilderness. So why would he stop when they get to the promised land? And the long life and healthy babies ties all the way back to Genesis 3, when mankind was cursed to be separated from God's eternal life and was cursed to have pain in conceiving and bearing children. God is coming to throw the shackles of sin off his people and live with mankind again, if they keep the covenant. I will send my terror ahead of you and throw into confusion all the people among whom you come. And I will make all your enemies turn their backs on you. I will send hornets ahead of you so that they drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites before you. I will not drive them out before you in a single year, that the land may not become desolate and the beasts of the field become too numerous for you. I will drive them out before you little by little until you become fruitful and take possession of the land. I will fix your boundary from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the river Euphrates, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you will drive them out before you. God is also going to protect the Israelites from enemies and wild beasts and desolation. He's thought of everything. And he's going to make it so that the Israelites' simple presence in the area allows them to inherit all of the land that God has promised to them. A huge and bountiful land from the Red Sea to the Euphrates River. Basically, that is to say, from Egypt to Babylon. But again, it's conditional. You shall make no covenant with them or with their gods. They shall not live in your land, because they will make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you. Right? In order to get all of these blessings, they have to keep that covenant with God, or else it's all null and void. But surely, with the power God has shown, with the generosity and the provision he has shown, with the moral upstanding he has shown, there's no reason for the Israelites not to completely agree to these terms. But as we'll see, verbally agreeing to a covenant and actually living by it, unfortunately, those are two different things. So in this chapter, we really see the end goal that God has for his people. He wants them to be a community of impartial love, acknowledging him and worshiping him for the way he's created them and provided for them. If they do that, he will live with them and establish a land for them. A land that's not able to be corrupted by sin or by slavery or by tyranny or oppression. This is the gospel, but with one key difference. The Israelites aren't going to be able to keep this covenant perfectly. No one will. And that's why we need a mediator to intercede on our behalf. We need a righteous person who can keep that covenant for us. A model who we can base our lives off of. That's why we need Jesus. And faith in him, by his Spirit, allows us to experience the fulfillment of all of these promises. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope you have a good day, and God bless.